Welcome. Nice to see you all. So, I think as everybody's aware, we seem to be in the midst of what's being called the meta crisis, a global crisis of survival. Many things are happening all at the same time that are making this a very precarious time to be alive. There's global instability for many reasons, and you all know all the reasons why. Climate change, the fear of the collapse of global markets, political infighting, inability to come together, to work together to solve our collective problems in a way that's very dramatic. And the revolution that's happening with AI, which looks to be potentially very dangerous. And there's infinite problems that we're facing right now. You know them, you know about them all as well as I do. Many people have pointed out that we're living in a unique time in history, that we've never faced a moment like this in history before, where we're facing the possibility of our own extinction. Might be a remote possibility, but it's a genuine possibility. The possibility of our own extinction is also of the destruction of the biosphere, the very planet that's our home, our mother. So a lot of very serious thinkers feel that this is a unique time in history that's never occurred before, that humanity has never been faced with their own potential extinction before. We've been faced with enormous crises and small extinctions, but not a total potential for a total extinction. So whether that's going to happen actually or not, we don't know. But what we are becoming gradually aware of is that the world that we've known is ending, and we're coming into a new era of human history that's going to be pregnant with dangers that have never existed. And probably a big feature of the near future is going to be instability and a lot more suffering than there has been before on a global scale. And more of us are becoming aware of these frightening truths. A lot of people want to know what to do about it. So I don't have the answer. I don't have the answer because I'm a spiritual teacher. I'm a teacher of enlightenment, and I'm an evolutionary. So evolutionaries always see the problem. Evolutionaries always see the solution to the human predicament, the ultimate solution that human beings find themselves faced with, usually is solved in an evolutionary context by the evolution of consciousness. All the problems that we're facing have been created by us. And the solution from an evolutionary point of view is always the evolution of consciousness. Easier said than done. Of course, it's true that if we want this crisis to be averted, if we want these challenges to be met with reason and compassion and care and justice, consciousness has to evolve on a more or less global scale in a way that's very dramatic, but it doesn't look objectively like we're anywhere near close to any kind of event like that. And it seems that we're becoming more polarized nationally and internationally, and struggling against each other instead of with each other in maybe more ways than we ever have been before. So the world we're living in is becoming more complex, and the complexity is not making these questions easier to answer, it's making them harder to answer. So the solution to these infinite crises from an evolutionary point of view is always the same. It's the evolution of consciousness. But that doesn't look like that's going to be happening anytime soon on a global scale. So what are we to do? So what I wanted to suggest in this talk was not a solution for the global predicament we're all facing, because I'm not equipped to give that kind of answer, and I don't really know if anybody is. But what what I want to suggest and speak about is a potential, what's the most appropriate, what could be the most spiritually appropriate personal and maybe collective response to this crisis. Not how can I solve this crisis, or how can we solve this crisis, because I'm not so sure it's going to be solved anytime soon. But more, a different way to look at the question I want to ask is, what might be the most appropriate way for me, the most spiritually appropriate, context appropriate way for me to be able to respond to this crisis, to be able to relate to it in a way that spiritually makes the most sense, that seems to be most in alignment with the challenging and changing reality that we're in the midst of, we find ourselves in the midst of. So I wanted to speak about that, and I wanted to say that I'm usually, when I teach, I'm always offering one perspective, and it's the perspective I've realized when my own consciousness got awakened in a powerful way when I met my teacher almost 40 years ago. So what he made me realize is that the ultimate truth about the ultimate nature of reality is to be found when we transcend time. And when we're seeking for the awakening to enlightened awareness, we experience that awakening to enlightened awareness when we transcend the time process. When we transcend the time process, we transcend the mind, because the mind and time arise along the same line. So when time is transcended, the mind is transcended, and we begin to see things very differently. See things from a perspective of inner freedom and primordial freedom and liberation, a profound liberation and joy. So the enlightenment experience, or the awakening to the profound experience of liberation and joy, makes it possible for us to live, for human beings to live in a very different way. It enables us to embrace what I call an absolute relationship to life. And an absolute relationship to life is one in which we are not postponing a total commitment to being alive. A big part of the awakening process, as I've experienced it and as I experience it, is about having the inner freedom to embrace the total commitment that's required to live a conscious life. And when a lot of people begin on the spiritual path, they're not quite aware of the fact that most of us aren't living very consciously, aren't living very deliberately, aren't living very intentionally. We're usually not thinking in the deepest and most profound and most spiritually implicating ways about what it means to be alive. And what are the moral, philosophical, metaphysical implications of self-aware consciousness in a complex world. So usually, if we haven't woken up, we are kind of lost in the dream of our personal stories and are not embracing the challenge of being a conscious human being in a very big context. So the gift of awakening to consciousness enables us to embrace a very different kind of relationship to the gift of life, which means a much more conscious relationship to life. And the more conscious we are, it becomes more apparent to us that we got to have that for life to be lived consciously, meaningfully, purposefully, intentionally, and with destiny and direction and higher meaning. Life has to be embraced with a kind of commitment that is total and unconditional and absolute, without any reservation. And when we wake up, we find that the ego is usually not interested in a total commitment to anything except its own survival. So what I wanted to suggest is that this global crisis that we're all in the midst of, one way or the other, that it's going to get worse. Might give us all an opportunity to stop waiting, to wake up. Might give us all an opportunity to stop postponing whatever it is we're postponing. So the way I like to put it in the way that I teach is postponing an unconditional, uncompromised, or absolute relationship to life. So usually for most of us, there's many things that we'd like to be doing, we would hope to be doing, many things we are interested in, but we tend to be very busy and very distracted and very consumed with other things. We tend to postpone the big decisions, the big issues, tend to put them off. And the luxury of time, the belief that we have time, helps to diminish any sense of urgency we may have for kind of a deeper kind of relationship to being alive, for a deeper sense of purpose and context, and a deeper relationship to our own experience of consciousness. If we think for whatever reason that we have time, that we have more time, that it's not urgent, we're probably not going to take the level of urgency that's necessary seriously enough to actually change. And over the years I've been teaching, I've noticed that most people, even in relationship to their own potential to awaken to enlightened awareness, tend to be too casual about it, tend to lack the sense of urgency that's necessary to succeed. Everybody should remember what the Buddha said when he sat down under the Bodhi tree. He said, I'm going to sit down and I'm not going to get up till I'm enlightened. He was expressing a great sense of urgency and a deep level of commitment and intention around his relationship to the task at hand. So I think that this global crisis, it's going to get worse, could afford all of us an opportunity to stop waiting. Whatever it is, whatever the reason is that we're waiting, this global crisis could be a catalyst or a source of inspiration to stop waiting, because maybe we don't have as much time left as we think we do. We don't know. But it looks likely that life as we've known it will not be sustained in the way that we've become used to. And we're going to be living in very precarious times on this planet. And so maybe we should embrace the sense of urgency as a gift for us spiritually to be able to stop waiting for anything more to happen in order for us to be ready to either let go of fear and doubt on one hand, or to stop making excuses about why we shouldn't do the most important thing in our lives, whatever we think that is. Over the years I've been teaching, I've noticed that a lot of people with spiritual interests tend to be in their spiritual practice, in the practice of meditation, study of metaphysical philosophy, tend to be in a process of getting ready to be ready to let go, getting ready to be ready to be enlightened one day in the future or in a future lifetime. And there's a very big difference between getting ready to be ready and being ready now. So people who are getting ready to be ready feel that they're sincere about their spiritual aspirations because they are getting ready to be ready. I'm intending to be ready. So my spiritual intentions are sound. But in the end, it's in relationship to awakening to enlightened awareness. The only thing that makes all the difference is being ready now. Not being ready to be ready, but being ready. And when we get to when we get to that point when we cease getting ready to be ready, cease compromising, cease to postpone the most important issues, the most important questions, the most important choices in our lives, we start to live life very differently. We start to live with the kind of deliberate intentionality that spiritually vibrates with absolute conviction. With spiritual presence and absolute conviction, because we're not bargaining anymore. We're not bargaining in our relationship to life. We're not hedging our bets. We're not trying to have things our way. What a novel idea. We're not trying to have things our way anymore. We realize that if this is going to work, we have to give it everything we've got. We have to give everything and leave the rest in the hands of destiny. But it means we've stopped waiting, we've stopped holding back, we've stopped resisting, we've stopped justifying ourselves and stopped making excuses. So maybe, just maybe, an appropriate spiritual response to this frightening time we're living in. Sackstein calls this time a time between worlds. Maybe the most appropriate relationship to this time between worlds is to come to the end of compromise, come to the end of hesitation, coming to the end of excuses about why we're not living completely, fully, and absolutely and unconditionally right now. Because the thing is, once you do let go, or once one does let go, once we do begin to live with total commitment, with the intensity of total commitment, we're not living for the future anymore, we're living for the present moment. And we are embodying and enacting the immediacy of spirit in the way that we live, in the choices we make, and the actions we take in our fundamental relationship to life, and in our relationship to the relationships with other people, but fundamentally in our relationship to life itself, to the gift of life. We're playing for real. And that means we cease to be superficial people. we cease to be superficial people after that, because we're taking life absolutely seriously, the gift of life absolutely seriously. And we mean it. We start to express a kind of sincerity, wholeheartedness, integrity and wholeness at the level of the soul that makes us very different. This imbues a kind of a weightiness or a heaviness in the positive sense of what that means, a depth to our soul, to our being, that vibrates with spiritual self-awareness. That's a result of the fact that we stop waiting, we stop hesitating, we stop waiting for things to change, we stop waiting for ourselves to change, we stop waiting for anything. We're not making any excuses anymore, because we know that this is it, and there's nothing to wait for anyway. There never was. There never was anything to wait for, but the ego keeps saying, no, I need more time. I need more time to get ready, to get ready. And so we press the pause button, and after we press the pause button, life doesn't stop, and the karma creating machine doesn't stop either. It all keeps going. So life doesn't wait for us, doesn't wait for any of us. The process continues on and on and on, whether we think we're ready for it or not. So from an absolute point of view or a non-relative point of view, waiting doesn't never make sense anyway, because it's out of alignment with the deepest truth about the nature of reality anyway. That's why when we live our lives invested in the ego's fears and desires, we're always out of alignment with the deeper dimensions of life and truth and consciousness. And when we cease to wait absolutely, we let go of the fears and desires of the small self, we find ourselves suddenly in the very middle of everything, the very center of the, feels like the very center of the cosmos, the level of consciousness. We start living a very different life in a very different way, for very different reasons than most people do. Full of awakened consciousness and awakened intention, and with the vulnerability of kind of a full commitment to this journey, no matter how hard it's going to be, no matter how challenging it's going to be. We're fully committed to being here for the highest reasons. So I think this global crisis is not just giving us an opportunity to awaken in the way I'm trying to describe, but it gives us a reason to transcend the small self. It gives us a reason to stop waiting. When I die, I want to die peacefully, I hope. And I know the only thing that's going to allow me to die in peace will be the doubtless conviction that I've given this life everything that I could, that I couldn't have given more. And then as a result of that, I'll be able to let go. Because this means to die without regret. If we live with commitment, we can die without regret. And I think this is the kind of thing that this moment in history, this time between worlds, will give us. Because the fact is, I just repeated what I said about what I've already said. The fact is that life and the continuity of life, and maybe for some of us, this is the security of the life unfolding in what we believe was predictable ways, is going to become more and more uncertain. So in the midst of that uncertainty, we might become more concerned with focus on our survival than we ever have in our lives before. And remember that when we're focused on survival, when any of us are focused mainly on survival, we tend to have less time to focus on higher matters of the spirit, of higher matters like philosophical questions, spiritual questions, metaphysical questions, and moral questions. So maybe it might be best to use the time we've got left. We don't know how much we've got, but maybe it might be a good idea to use the time we've got left to do anything and everything we can spiritually to be prepared, to be spiritually prepared for the unpredictable nature of the kind of world we're going to be living in. And oh, what a glorious world we could live in if we all stopped pretending and stopped holding on to the past and stopped resisting the totality of the present, the imminence of the present, and stopped trying to fake it till we make it. She's not being completely authentic and totally real. Stop playing games. Stop waiting. Then we could all find each other in truth, which would be so remarkably beautiful and unimaginably wonderful. You know, men who go to war often report that as horrible and as dark as the battlefield is, many men report because they are bonded. They're bonding in a situation where they're all facing life and death. There's something about sharing that life and death context with other human beings that they report is absolutely exhilarating and thrilling beyond imagination. And many men who come back from war, in spite of how grotesque it obviously can be, many of them report that they never felt so alive and so awake and so in touch with reality because they were face to face with death. And this catalyzed in a lot of them an experience of aliveness that was transcendental, and that was thrilling. So maybe we can use the sense of terror and urgency that many of us experience when we look into a lot of the problems that we're facing on a global scale. Maybe we can use this sense of urgency and fear as a source of inspiration to again, as I said, stop waiting, stop pretending, stop hesitating, stop postponing, and to live, to make the commitment to live as fully and honestly and transparently and as lovingly as we possibly can while we still have the time and the space to do it consciously. When things are going well, practically, materially, and personally, spiritual practice is a luxury. When things aren't going well, that changes. So it would be noble, and it would be appropriate for us to practice our aspirations to become spiritually awake, evolutionarily enlightened, spiritually transformed, so that we can be beacons in this darkening world. Because the whole point of awakening, the significance of awakening, the meaning of awakening, the purpose of awakening, is the conscious discovery of a non-relative or absolute truth about the ultimate nature of existence. And anybody who discovers, directly experiences, awakens to the ultimate nature of existence in their own way begins to vibrate, begins to transmit that the light of enlightened awareness, the light of the highest truth that can be known by men and women. And the more of us that can vibrate with this kind of gnosis, this kind of knowledge, this kind of spiritual self-confidence, we can help each other to face into some of the more challenging times we're going to be going through. Because it takes courage to face difficult times. And the awakening to the highest truth, it becomes a source of spiritual courage for all of us. And as I'm sitting here thinking, I'm thinking that this whole idea of waiting, waiting is never a good idea, but maybe the gift of this crisis could be the fact that we really don't have much more time to wait anyway. There's nothing more to wait for. The jig is up from a certain point of view. And nobody knows where we're going, and nobody knows what life's going to be like in even 5 years from now, let alone 10 years from now, let alone 20 years from now. Maybe it won't be as bad as some people say it'll be. Maybe it'll be a lot worse, but we literally don't know. We literally don't know where we're going. We don't know what life's going to be like anymore. This history is changing. So what would be the most spiritually appropriate attitude to have, metaphysical position to take in relationship to the unpredictable nature of the imminent future? Would be to stop waiting. And so when we begin to take seriously what it means to stop waiting, our spiritual cup will begin to runneth over. Because then the immediacy of the challenge of letting go in the way I've been trying to describe it to you begins to reveal itself. Oh my God, you mean I have to let go of that? And I have to let go of that, and I have to let go of that, and that, and that. It means it's time to clean out the closet. A lot of people don't clean out their closets. They say, I'll do it next year. But in the face of this kind of crisis, maybe we don't have the time to wait, which is the whole point of everything I'm trying to share with you. So knowing that we don't have the time to wait is a great gift if we stop waiting. But if we know that we don't really have much more time to wait, and we insist on waiting anyway, then we're doing ourselves and everybody else a disservice. So the spiritually courageous, the spiritually noble will not resist the call of the present moment. And will begin to let go of anything and everything that's in their way. So we can truly be available for the moment. And we can make good on this moment. So I realized that we were in a terrible crisis that we've created for ourselves, but I'm making the best use out of this crisis. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I've had the opportunity to finally stop playing games and to begin to let go of everything in my way. I am becoming reborn. I'm a new human being. I know who I am. I know why I'm here. And I've discovered a sense of purposefulness that changes absolutely everything. Thank you. I'm so grateful. So grateful. So instead of becoming overwhelmed by the unpredictability of what's coming, we should use the unpredictability of what's coming as a source of spiritual inspiration to let go. I know I'm a bit of a broken record, but this is the fundamental point I wanted to make. I don't think it can be made enough because it's very tempting for all of us because what's coming seems to be so frightening that it's good to kind of turn the TV back on and pretend that it's not as bad as they say. But it looks like it is. It looks like it's going to get worse. So if we stop resisting that truth, we get to face into it, not for its own sake, but so we can be more free, so we can become potentially spiritually truly awake and truly enlightened, then it will be a great gift. But this is my humble proposal. What might be the most appropriate response to this time between worlds, this meta crisis, this crisis which you've never faced before? I realize that might have been a little short, but I shared everything that I wanted to say. I'm happy to comment on it in any way you might like to hear more. We should approach this with the kind of deliberateness and awakened intensity that we have understood samurai warriors who are also Zen masters live, ready to die, ready to die, and ready to stand on the razor's edge right now because they're so in touch with the immediacy and the totality of reality, and nothing's being pushed off into the future. Like a total embrace of the present, unconditional, radical, and absolute, which changes our relationship to life in the most radical way imaginable. And then we don't know what's going to happen, but we don't know what's going to happen anyway. Because if we stop pretending that we do, that's the difference. So when you stop pretending to yourself that you know what's going to happen, you're living life much more on the actual razor's edge. Nobody knows anyway. But if you can live in that with that kind of consciousness from day to day with great deliberateness and intensity, you become a different kind of person. Someone who's truly awake and helps other people to wake up just simply because of the intensity of the transmission of our consciousness.
Would you like to take questions, Andrew?
Yeah, in a minute. I was just thinking about the phrase from John Lennon saying, life's what happens when we're making other plans. It was just coming back to me. Life's what happens when we're making other plans, which is along the lines of what I've been sharing with everybody. Yeah, just give you a minute or two. See if there's anything else I want to add to what I said. I think I've more or less made the point that I wanted to make. I think we want our consciousness to become so big that we are, at least metaphysically, we're prepared for whatever happens. Doesn't mean we're going to like it, but it means at the deepest level we're prepared. And the only way to be prepared is to stop waiting. Whenever we stop waiting, we have to respond from a very different position, a very different part of ourselves to the depth of reality as it unfolds before us. One thing's for sure, we can't go on as if the world isn't changing and as if these changes are not going to have an effect on us personally, because they will. The best thing for us to do is to face it with all of our being. Yeah, I think I'm ready for some questions, Daniela.
Okay, so please write your questions in the chat box of Zoom. You find it on the bottom of your Zoom window. And I have a first question, Andrew, from Gil. He is asking, can you please speak about the right relationship? Because right relationship is here immediately with the people you live with. Can you comment on not waiting to be in the right relationship?
Hi, Gil.
Hey, hi, I'm back.
I noticed.
Yeah.
Um, well, I think right relationship has very much to do with living in integrity according to the context in which this relationship exists. So relationships are consciously or unconsciously, deliberately, are not based upon shared values. if you marry somebody, will marry each other because they share the same values and they want the same things. When you join the army, you become part of a larger collective. You share similar values, or enough similar values to be able to create a context in which men can begin to trust each other, rely on each other. In anything and everything we do for scientists in the laboratory, there needs to be enough shared agreements to make it possible for us to work together with integrity. So I think that the issue with living in truth in terms of the relationship context is that we have to live in integrity with that integrity that's in alignment with with the shared values and the shared agreements that brought us together. So, for example, in a marriage, if there's a betrayal, it means that one or both of the parties involved have broken the shared agreements. Some of these agreements can be explicit or implicit, but everybody knows what they are if they're in a relationship. So if it's a marriage bond, if someone breaks the shared agreement, they're out of integrity. They're out of the integrity that the shared agreement was implicitly or explicitly expressing. This is true in all human relationships. So if we're spiritually conscious beings, we need to be very, very sensitive and very aware to how much integrity do we have personally in relationship to these shared agreements with other people that we're in relationships with, whether it may be in our work or in our personal relationships or spiritual relationships. Are we in integrity? And the integrity means, am I being true to the values that we share, that we agreed upon? Usually relationships break up because one or more people in these shared agreements start acting out of integrity. So in terms of relationships, the integrity, being in integrity with the shared agreements, is what makes a lasting trust possible. And of course, if we can sustain being in committed relationships over a long period of time, the trust, which is a sacred bond between human beings, can deepen between people that are married, even between people at work, people in all kinds of different contexts. The trust deepens over time, and
Right.
that becomes very sacred.
Can I say something?
Sure.
Well, I agree. Integrity obviously is something important, but there's, one of the best things you've ever said is, quoting the Buddha about right association and right relationship as being all of the holy life. Now, integrity is part of it, but we meet people who we do not share agreements, we do not share values, but we still have to be in right relationship with them. And how specifically? Yes, certainly integrity, agreements, but there's more to right relationship than integrity and agreements. There's lots of details in terms of basic orientation and how do I relate to this? And you know the phrase spiritual friendship, how to be a spiritual friend, which is the whole of the holy life.
Well, by being for real.
Yeah, so how to be a friend, because a lot of people don't know how to be a friend.
No, I understand that, but Gil, I think the point you're missing here is that I'm talking about shared agreements. It means that you and I would enter into a shared agreement where we agree on the rules of the relationship. And if we agree on the rules, and that agreement has not been coerced, but it's freely given, then we both know what the rules are.
Well, I would agree with that, with the rules.
So what you're saying is, well, how do I relate to people in which I don't have shared agreements with? It's a different issue. So if you don't have shared agreements with someone else, you do the best you can. You try and be kind and Trying to be kind. Still tries to be as kind as you can, and
Uh, well, well,
forgive everyone for their own. Forgive yourself and forgive everybody else for their imperfections, and do the best you can. But when I'm speaking about specifically relates to a context in which the shared agreements are very conscious and deliberate. Of course, in much of life is associating with people in which we don't have shared agreements. And what do we do? In those situations, varied situations, we do the best we can.
well, yeah, maybe people can stop waiting to be kind. Stop waiting to be compassionate with the people you live with. Because I really love what you're saying about don't wait. There's some urgency. There's some real urgency on being nice with the people you live with.
Well, it's true, Gil, but in the talk, the point is it's more than being nice, is being real.
Being okay, and then the words, sure, real, authentic, genuine, and how about powerful? How about really powerful and caring?
Beautiful. If powerful in the context of being loving, absolutely.
Now, why? Now, I think people are really postponing getting on with becoming powerful and caring.
Yeah, that's a psychological issue, but that's true. But if you want to be real, it's not your problem. It's their problem.
I'm just, yeah, I just love what you're saying. Like, get on with it. Get on with it. Don't wait. You know,
Well,
and
because there's no, thank you, Gil. Because the reason I'm saying that is because what they call karma in the East is real. So there is karma is the momentum that comes from the past, and if the momentum has been generated by acts of selfishness, small-mindedness, ignorance, and ill will, that's going to cause us suffering in the present and in the future. So we have to stop we have to stop living in such a way that makes us ourselves prey and subject to be victims of our own ignorance and our own stupidity in the past. That's why we have to begin to live so deliberately with such intentionality now, so we can be free from the karma that we've generated in the past. That's what I mean by being real, and being real means that life is real. Life hurts, it can be very painful. Life can be beautiful beyond imagination and meaningful beyond description. And in order to know all those things directly, we have to be willing to be absolutely real and give up all the pretense that we hide behind. This pretense protects us from experiencing life in all its reality. We give that up. We have to experience a kind of vulnerability and intensity of vulnerability. That can be frightening. It's why most people shy away from being real, because they don't want to experience that kind of vulnerability. So then they prefer a life of pretense. And usually these kind of decisions are made very early in life. So a lot of people find themselves fully grown adults, and they're living with levels and levels and levels and layers of pretense that they didn't even know were there. And then as they begin to do spiritual practice and begin to wake up, they discover, oh my God, I had no idea how full of it I am, and how unreal I am, and how cowardly I am, superficial. So what I'm speaking about here is important, but it's a great ordeal. It's a great ordeal I'm calling all of us to take seriously. And I'm saying we could maybe use this meta crisis as fuel to catalyze our own deeper relationship to life.
yeah, I mean, hardly need a meta crisis. People have enough crisis in their own life.
Amen. Amen.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Gil.